All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the createTED podcast. I'm excited to say today that my guest is the Scottie Hobbs. And I have to say, it makes me chuckle whenever I say that because for me, Scottie is Scott. Scott's, I don't know why I always say my wife's cousin. You're still my cousin. Um,
Yeah,
but for some reason, I always say my wife's cousin. But Scott is my cousin. We've known each other for probably almost 25, 26 years. That's how long I've been
yeah.
married
It's got to
to
be
my
about
wife.
then.
And so it's been fun to watch Scott go on this journey. And I'm going to point you right now to his podcast called The Level Up Life. And hopefully I can get in Scott's introduction, he'll tell us a little bit about his journey. But I brought Scott on today because he is a perfect example of understanding your purpose and how the understanding that purpose can just drive, help you complete the goals that you have. And I know listeners, I know there's a lot of you that have big goals that you want to accomplish and there's things that you want to do creatively. And I think there's also some business principles that Scott can share as well. But Scott, why don't we start off? Just give everyone just kind of a brief background about you and how you ended up where you're at right now.
Yeah, sounds good. So I've been married to my wife, Gabby, for 19 years. We have five kids. Our girls are 18, 16, 14, and I have two boys that are 12 and 9. And interesting fact is I met my wife at a rock show. So not typically the place where we'd be like, this is going to be a marriage that is going to last. It's not the typical place where you'd be like, that's going to be where you want to meet your eternal companion or your person that you're going to be with for the rest of your life. And so we met at a rock show. Pretty cool story. And I enjoyed saying that part. Now you said, I go by Scottie on social media, but my natural born name is Scott. Funny story about that, just real quick, is, and I've been hearing it more and more often on podcasts with Tony Robbins or Ed Milet from time to time, where they say like sometimes you have to get into this like alter ego. Like, have you ever seen like a character in a Marvel movie will change into something else? And that's kind of what I did. I remember I started wanting to build a business with my passion back in about 2010. I was thinking about it. I officially started in 2011. And I was just getting like some negative feedback, some critics on my Facebook account, like, why are you always showing shirtless pictures? So I'd gotten into the health and wellness space of transformations. And like I was not as mentally strong as I am now. And so those things bothered me. And I was like, oh, I don't want to really bother people. And I was like, I'll just create this new account and I'm going to be this whole new fitness and health and wellness guru person. And so I created a whole new Facebook and I just Scottie Hobbs instead of my Scott Hobbs that I had always been on there. And so that's where that started. So some people are
Oh,
like, do you
really?
go by Scottie or Scott? And it was me really just saying, I'm going to go do something big with this fitness space I'm going to just kind of create something new. So that's where that all started. Long story short, and you can ask and dig in any questions. I know we want to talk a lot about purpose and kind of how to identify what that is and get into the how to take your creative ideas and make a full-time income out of it or make a good income or whatever it is your goal is. But for me, I fell in love with health and fitness back in 2010. I had been inactive in the church that I belonged to with my wife for the first 5 years of our marriage, and I had this guy knock on my door, and I let him in because he had a plate of brownies, and he's sitting there, and he was just the friendliest, the nicest dude, and we really related, we connected. He had two daughters, I had two daughters at the time, we were the same age, and it turns out he was a special teams coach in Utah. He had moved to Idaho, got a job at the high school, and was the special teams coach and the strength coach. And so I'm like, I remember sitting there and his biceps were like bulging out of his t-shirt. And I'm just this frumpy, you know, chubby dad bod at the age of 28. And I was just like, dude, how do you like, what's the difference, man? Like, we're the same age. We both got two daughters. You look like that, and I look like this. Yeah, and he's like, hey man, he's like, you gotta do the push diet, is what he told me. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, you gotta push bad food away from your plate. And I was like, all right, well, what is a bad food? And I became really curious about what it meant to eat healthy, how to transform your body, how to feel good. He just had this energy about him, and I
Mhm.
wanted that. And the cool thing about him is he invited me to come work out with him. He's like, I train the high school kids, you can come work out with me. And I was like, let's do it. And unfortunately, they trained at 6 a.m. at the high school
Ooh,
gym, and I went to work at 5 a.m. I worked a 12-hour shift at that time in a steel factory. So my journey started with just asking him questions like, okay, what can I do since I can't come work out with you? And he introduced me to a home fitness program. I fell in love with that program. I lost 38 pounds in 90 days, had abs for the first time. But something bigger happened where I fell in love with this process of people like saying like, dude, Scottie, what are you doing? Like I see this change, this energy shift. Obviously, I could see you had some sort of transformation. What can I do? And I fell in love with just teaching people that were a step behind me, just like he did to me. And that's where my business kind of started.
yeah, that's awesome. I can remember having a push-up battle out back on back Grandma Joy's back deck.
Yep.
And spoiler alert, no surprise, Scotty beat me. So
That's
yeah,
funny.
and I still have the frumpy dad bod as to where Scott does not. So, um, but it's been interesting to watch as that started off with one thing, toward then it became this passion, and over time watching you refine that purpose. Well, why don't we start? Tell listeners kind of like right now what you would say your purpose is.
Yeah. So my purpose is to help remind people that their families are the most important work on earth, help people feel better, and teach them how to earn more income for their family. Now, why is that important to me? Like, I believe we all deserve to feel the best. And so many people in life go through life miserable, tired, exhausted, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. So I really want to help people feel good because when you can feel good, you can experience life at a better level. You can go out and hike, you can run, play with your kids. Um, if you do any research about, and you probably feel this yourself, like even my wife last night ordered Walmart pickup or grocery deliver, and she's like, it was $350, and that's like a 1 week. She's like,
Mm,
I didn't change anything in the order, and it like went up $50. And so we all feel some sort of financial pressure. We work hard at our jobs. Maybe we have a job that we love, but it's just hard to keep up with inflation and with bills and outside of that, I think people want to do more incredible things. They want to go take their family to Disney World, or they want to pay off their home quicker, or they want to be able to pay to send their kids to college or pay for their missions, or they have credit card debt and they can't sleep at night because they're trying to figure out how to get out of that credit card debt or that school loan debt. And if I have conversations, which I do every single day, 95% of people, even if they love their job, have a career that they enjoy and is fulfilling to them, are still struggling to keep up with all of that stuff
mm.
or be able to go do the things they actually want. And so that's where that part of help families earn more income for their family plays a huge role for me. Um, I could tell you a story in a minute if you want, but there came a point where that became my purpose. Where you hear that phrase that says the two greatest days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you figure out why.
Yeah,
I was about 8 months into my business when that happened for me. And I'll just tell you about that real quick.
oh, that'd be
So
great.
I started building this business. I started selling fitness, nutrition programs, and supplements. And I had this big ambitious goal for me to earn $10,000 in a year. Like I was willing to work at my job 12-hour days. I mean, I went to work at 5, I got home at 5, but my wife worked nights. So she would go to the Hilton Garden Inn at 3, drop the kids off at the babysitter on her way there. I would pick them up on my way home at 5. And so for 5 years, we lived this separate life where she raised the kids in the day, I raised them at night. So that was a big ambitious goal for me to earn 10,000 because she earned like 14,000 working that front desk. And
Mm,
so I figured if I could earn 10,000, she could come home from work
mm,
and we wouldn't have to send the kids to the babysitter. And that meant a lot to me. So the goal would be $10,000. I think when we start to unravel this, what is my purpose? I think it's first identify some goals that are important in your life. And that was important to me, that $10,000, because, or the why of that was it meant that when I got home from work at 5, my wife would be there. My
mm.
kids would see my wife and I together. We could take walks, could play sports with the kids in the front yard, take bike rides, eat dinner together, and our kids could see two parents together versus these separate lives. So I worked really hard at it. I was about 8 months into that journey of building this business. Remember, this is exhausting, and I love to tell the truth of what it takes to build a business. Um, I was passionate about it, so I was able to work hard for a few months work 12-hour days. I want you to visualize this. Work 12-hour days in the factory. It's hard physical labor and demanding stuff with shipping and all of that stuff. I ran some departments. I would get home and I would have to take care of a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-week-old when I first started my business by myself, which is feed them, bathe them,
Yeah.
burp them, change dirty diapers, get them in bed, and then work on your business. Most people would say, I'm too tired. I don't have enough time. I need to get to sleep because I got to get back up for work. So, but I was so pulled or drawn by that that I worked hard because I wanted my wife home. And I got to a point, I was about 8 months in. I was earning enough weekly that my wife could come home. Like we hadn't considered it yet because I wanted to surpass that.
Hmm.
But I got what's called the man cold. Now you know what that is. Any guy listening to this
Yeah.
knows, any wife knows, like we get a cold, our wife gets the same cold, and they still do everything that they do, but we nearly die.
Yep.
So I was in bed like 3 days, and my wife, it was a Friday, my wife comes in, she's like, hey, you probably start to feel better if you shower, get out of bed, get dressed, and start moving around because I'd slept for like 3 days straight. And so I get up and I shower, I get dressed. She's like, hey, Keena's my oldest. She's like, Keena's going to get home from the school bus in a minute. She was in kindergarten. And she's like, would you go pick her up? And so I shower, I get dressed, and we still live in the same home. I'm walking down the cul-de-sac, and I'm about halfway there, and the school bus pulls up, and it pulls up to the end of the cul-de-sac on the left-hand side, so they can get off and just come down the sidewalk. And I remember it was like it was yesterday. The doors of that school bus fling open, makes that sound like shh, the doors
Yep.
fling open, and I see these two little hands grab the handle, and she looks up at me, and I just break down. Like I'm in tears. She's smiling at me, and I'm just froze. And in that moment, I think like, man, how many of these moments have I missed? Because she's just smiling at me. I've never picked
Yeah.
her up at the school bus, and she just smiles so big to see her daddy there. And I just remember like feeling like, how many of these moments have I missed? But here's the thing I want you to understand. Like
Yep.
I'm there. Like I'm like my wife's like I'm not a dad that's like comes home, sleeps on the couch, or ignores them playing video games or out at the bars or anything. Like I'm there feeding them, bathing them, but it's like
Yeah.
coming home from a 12-hour work shift, just stressed out, like tired, going through the motions. Like I gotta feed them, bathe them, burp them. It's all routine.
Yeah.
Like get them in bed, and then they don't sleep, and then you're like frustrated because you're trying to get your business stuff done at night when they're asleep. So it's like you're there, but you're not there.
Yeah.
You're there, but you're not present. And so I was like, man, how many of these moments have I missed? But the bigger question, the more important question that I asked myself in that moment was, how many more of these moments will I continue to miss if I don't push through this pain? Because I'd gotten to a point with that side business that I was like, I'm making enough. My wife could come home. I could just kind of chill a little bit. I don't need to sit down and block out 3 hours of these are my disciplined activities I need to do to build my business that I'd done for 8 months.
Yeah.
Like I could just like if people want help, I could help them. Like I got enough customer base already. My wife could come home. But it was in that moment where I realized that I wanted to not miss any more moments in my kids'
Mm.
lives. Like I didn't want work or a job or stress of a job to keep me from being present as a dad. And so that's the moment where I was like, I'm going to build a full-time income where I get to decide what I want to do with my time. And then the bigger thing that happened in that moment, like I made that decision. So I think an important note for the audience and
Yeah.
for you listening is you have to make a decision at some point with anything in your life when you're going to make a change. And that was the decision for me. Like I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a business that allows me to be present, where no one can dictate what I do with my time. But the bigger thing that happened was I realized that, man, if I could do it, like if this Scott Hobbs guy could do that, like I could train, mentor, teach, inspire, whatever you want to call it, anybody in the world to do it. And I share that with you because I mean Ted knows me from back in the day. Like I wasn't always this be able to come on here and talk. Like I
Yeah.
remember the first video I made for my business, it took me like 100 takes. And I go back and watch it sometimes because I look like a deer in headlights, like a hostage with a gun outside or
Yeah.
something. I'm just so scared and not well spoken and super shy and timid. And so I was like, if this guy can do it, anybody could do it. Like if this guy that dropped out of BYU, Idaho, on an associate's degree, general associate's degree, nothing that challenging. If this college dropout could do it, like anybody could go out and build a business.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where that purpose started.
One thing that I and this is a total tangent here, but one thing I love that you highlighted, and this is especially important for dads that are creatives, is that being able to figure out how do you balance that so that you're giving your family priority first. And because sometimes that's hard because you have these passion projects that you want to work on, but you never can truly enjoy it if you're not putting your family first. And so one thing I've discovered, and I've got another friend that we've kind of discovered this is we do those activities kind of on the edges of the day. And the story you shared, that's where you were doing it is at the edge of the day, knowing that you had to be back to work at 5 a.m. You were still doing it after you waited till after the kids were in bed. Then you dedicated that time to it until it got to the point to where now that's, all you do. And it's made an adjustment. So I think that's just a great example of being able to do that to where it comes down to sacrifice. You've got to sacrifice make yourself a little uncomfortable to still put those other people first.
Yeah, I was gonna say sacrifice, and then you just pulled it up. You just pulled it up right with
Yeah,
like I was exhausted before I even started building that business, doing those 12-hour
yeah,
days. And I would go out on my lunch break at 12. I'd have like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'd eat it in like 4 minutes. I'd set an alarm and I would sleep 45 minutes in my car. So when I started my business, that 45 minutes to an hour on my lunch break became time to work on my business because it
yeah,
didn't interrupt with the wife and kids. It was 15 minutes. I'd check in before I got to work, and then at night I would work on it, but not until the kids went to bed. And
yeah,
the thing is important is, for 14 and a half years now, it's been my full-time career. But I could still be very present, and you just have to set those boundaries. So like I have the opportunity because that was part of my mission and purpose I shared with you on that kind of that school bus story
yeah,
is like I get up before the kid. I would like to wake up at 7:30 or 7, but I get up at like 5:45 or 6 so I could do my scripture reading, my morning journaling, my meditation. Like I write out my goals and vision every day. I read personal development. I create some sort of content to inspire or teach all before my kids get up. And then I have the opportunity to then be patient with them as they're getting ready to school and go out to school. And I get to drive, one of them right now that's in junior high to school.
hmm
And then once they're in school, I just stay focused, work, and then I'll need to be off and done by 2:45 when they walk in the door, and
yeah.
then have it turned off for the rest of the day. So you
That's all.
still set boundaries at different times of those phases.
No, and I think that's an awesome example too, because sometimes people figure out these creative things that I want to do, how do I get it in? And what Scott's a great example of is you build those routines and you start to see, even if you only have, 15 minutes a day, if you block out that 15 minutes every day, you'll notice your productivity will go up. And then eventually you'll be like, hey, I've got another 15 minutes I can do. And over time, you've got more and it's that just routine. I really can just testify that, our bodies and our minds, they adapt to that so we can really leverage the good things that we want to. And I think that's a blessing that God gives us is the ability to do that because He wants us to accomplish good things and to be able to share good things. And if we're willing to, going back to sacrifice, we're willing to sacrifice that little bit of time to be able to do that, then He magnifies that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my mind just went blank on what my next
You're
question
okay.
was going to ask you. Yeah,
I have a thought on that I'll play off of real quick.
yeah, go for it.
So So you're out there and you're like, okay, I want to write this book, or I want to start this podcast, or I'm passionate about music, so I want to teach music online, or whatever that passion is. A lot of times, the thing that's going to hold you back is not setting those blocks of time where you're uninterrupted and you've set aside the exact tasks. I call them the key income producing activities,
Mhm.
the KIPs that you need to do to create it. And a lot of times, someone will wake up, be like, okay, I'm going to work on this passion project today, and they open up their email or their Facebook or their Instagram looking for inspiration or looking for work, and then you get sucked into a trap of mindless scrolling or distractions that take your mind um, off of the goal that you want to do. And I heard a study that was just mind blowing to me. That Brendan Bouchard talks about a lot. He's the creator of the Growth Day app,
Hmm.
the personal development app, and he shared the. I wish I had that written down because my math is not the greatest, but
Yeah.
on average, Americans spend 2 hours mindlessly scrolling social media, and even on top of that, most Americans do 2 hours of television as well of some sort or Netflix binge watching of shows. So
Yeah.
if you take those 2 hours times 365 days, you have well over 700 hours. If you do 2 hours a day times a full year, over 700 hours of mindlessly scrolling social media. And what I heard that and I was like, wow, that's crazy. But the thing that was mind blowing to me is he then took that number and divided it by a 40-hour work week.
Hmm.
And it turns out that it was nine 40-hour work weeks that are
Wow.
wasted on mindlessly scrolling social media. And if you say if you do 2 hours of social media and 2 hours of television or some other thing, that's 4 hours, that number doubles and you're 18 hours of 40, 18 weeks of 40-hour
Wow.
workdays wasted. And a lot of people are like, man, I really want to write that book, but I just don't have any time. And it's just that we have the time, but it's just not allocated to the things that align with achieving our goals.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that. When you started, I was going to bring up that because I've heard you talk about that before. So I'm really glad
Yeah.
you did.
It's like I
And
don't have the numbers, but
I mean,
oh, there
I'm,
it is right there. 730 hours. It's 91.25 days, 18 weeks.
wow,
That's
that's insane.
crazy. It's 18 weeks with just the 2 hours,
Yeah.
not nine.
When you think about creative projects, um, if you take that, that 18 weeks, and that's looking at multiple hours, but if you just dedicated a half hour a day to, whether it's, we'll just stick with a novel, you're writing a half hour a day, that's going to add up, over a 2 year period, you'll have your draft done.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just taking a half hour out of that. And now I'm feeling very guilty about the almost 2 hours of TV I watched last night. Um,
Hey, I
but
do it with my wife as well.
I do have to say, after hearing that stat on one of Scott's episodes, I'm like, oh man, because I've been feeling that. Like I'm really getting to the point to where I just really dislike social media. Even I changed the way that I market this podcast. I used to have little videos, the short form videos I'd put out, and I pivoted and changed. I'm like, you want to know what? No, I'm just going to do something that says, hey, a new episode's coming, and then something that says, here's a new episode, and leave it at that because it let me remove myself from social media a little bit more.
Cool.
Now, when I'm on, I can definitely be more intentional, and there I'm a lot more mindful of the scrolling because it is easy to get sucked in there, but allows me to have more free time to explore some other things, and it's super, super rewarding.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for bringing that up. Um, I love what you started to share a little bit, just this concept of I'd love to hear what are some things you think someone who's they're gonna start kind of a freelance business and as a creative, whether it's they're gonna just whether they're doing it as a side gig or not, what are some more tips you might share with them of, hey, as you're getting started, because you've been doing this, you're essentially on your second business now,
Yeah.
and um, it's and listeners, you have to go watch listen to some of the things that Scott said in some other videos, but just to watch what what he went through in that first business, and then have to make a major pivot, and then to be doing a second one. There's, I think, some principles that are there that can help us as we are trying to grow our creative endeavors. So I'd love to hear just some just basic things for people to keep in mind.
Yeah, so this could be a whole 45-minute podcast alone, this question. So I'll try to be as brief as I can and concise on it. So, a backstory to what happened, I'd built a business for about 14 and a half years. I had like 80,000 customers. We were doing about 1.5 million in sales a week. And then on September 30th, I was at Sizzler with my mom for her birthday date, and I have the habit that we talked about of being where you are. So I'm not checking my phone. I'm there, present with my mom. But as we're walking out to the car, I just grab my phone because that's where my card is and, pay. And then there's all these notifications like, what does this mean? Like, what do we do? And so I still didn't even look at it. I drove my mom home and I started opening it. And long story short, we found out that the business that we built was being completely taken away from us. All the customers, all the volume of sales, all the commissions, all the income. So for 2 days, I felt like I cried on the floor. And the main reason, we've been good stewards of the business and the income that we've created, but the timing was not the best because we were building our dream home on the Snake River here in Idaho Falls and our fifth vacation rental in Park City. And so there's a lot of money in mortgages and then a business that's completely taken away. So my first items of business, just for that story, were like, okay, we're gonna sell these houses that we're building. Like we don't need a fifth vacation rental in our real estate portfolio, and we don't need a big fancy house. Like we're very happy where we're at and in this home that we're in right now. So my wife and I, we came to peace in terms with we're just going to list these homes and sell them. And I was kind of at a place, Ted, for a moment where I was like, I had a conversation with a guy that just reminded me of how wise we'd been in buying vacation rentals
Hmm.
and paying them off. They were Airbnbs, and how I've driven the same truck for 14 years and all of these different choices that we'd made. And he's like, Scottie, you could go off of social media and take your whole family on a mission trip for a year and you're still going to be okay. And so that kid kind of gave me a little bit of peace, but my wife and I made this decision like we're okay selling this dream home that we're building. And so I got with my builder, got with my lender. Yes, we're willing to sell it and we'll help you guys out with that. And I go on this final reward trip from that company, Ted, and it's the second night on the cruise ship. It's pitch dark because we're in the interior room and my wife's still asleep, but I'm following my routine. I'm on vacation, but I'm up early. And I get up. I'd started the new business about 4 days earlier. I had made this decision. I knew who the founder and CEO was. He was on my podcast earlier that year. So kind
Hmm.
of the stars aligned with giving me something that I could focus on, another type of business. Um, but we'd made a decision to sell our home. And I have this dream at night. I have dreams a lot. So I have this dream that I'm sitting on the back deck of this dream home that we're building with my wife. There was some My wife's Hispanic. For those that don't know, she's from Bolivia. There was some older Hispanic lady that was like mopping the deck, and Gabby and I were just laughing and talking with her, and we were just talking about how beautiful life was.
Hmm.
That this life that we'd created, and I could see my kids playing sports in the backyard, but I saw grandkids in this
Hmm.
dream. Little guys running around in the backyard with my sons and with my daughters. And one of my habits, it's right here. Every day I write out my goals and vision. And it involves sitting on that deck and how beautiful life
Yeah.
is. And I write it out every single day. But in this dream, for the first time, there was these grandkids, and we were talking about how
Hmm.
beautiful life was. And I'm kind of confused because I lost my business and made a decision to sell this house. But I've been visualizing this for like 10 years. So I'm
Wow.
confused. Like, okay, we're willing to let it go. Like, we're going to sell it, but what about the dream? Like, I'm just confused in my just everything because I've been visualizing it and imagining it. And so that morning in pitch dark in that cruise in that room, I'm just doing my morning prayer and meditation that I always do and journaling. And I'm like, what does this dream mean? Like, what does this mean for me? And I had this strong feeling come over me of like, I wanted to test and make sure that you were willing to get rid of anything material in your life.
Hmm.
But I gave you that dream to let you know that it's still possible for you. If you want, you have a passion for health and wellness and you have a business in front of you, you can go out. This dream is still possible. You don't have to let it go. And so that was a powerful moment for me to make that shift of being willing to let it go, like to sell that dream home and just, stay where we're at, to continuing on my, to be someone willing to grow and strive and to guide and to help other people. Now, as I share that story, I don't know if I completely answered the direct question that you
Yeah.
asked. So what, on top of that, oh, what could I help share with your
No,
audience?
actually, I think you took it in a direction that I want to talk about more than the other pieces.
Okay. Okay.
There are times and moments in life where, as creatives, when we get we have these ideas, these dreams, these goals, things we want to work on. I really do think, and I think your story highlights this. We have moments where will ask us, "Are you willing to give this up?" If I ask, and that's a really hard thing to do. I had a similar experience. There's a novel that I was working on, and I loved it. Like it was going to be a young adult political thriller. There weren't many of those out there, and I mean, I had spent a lot of time, loved it, and one day just had this feeling of, you don't need to write this. Get rid of it. And I'm like, wait, what? Because I've been working on it for years, and I had a writer friend I went. I'm like, okay, I'm having these feelings. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. But then I'm like, oh, okay, if that's what's being asked, okay, I'm willing to give that up. And I literally took the printouts that I had of the story, threw them away. The files that I had, deleted them. I think I still have like one basic outline somewhere, but I don't have anything else. Fast forward, I had an experience. I'm like, okay, that's the kind of story that are good for you to write. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean these are the kinds that I should be writing? I'm like, I deleted that. Why? And I've never understood why, but what it did teach me, because I had other experiences later, it taught me how to, if asked, if God asked, saying, hey, I need you to give this up because I need you to focus on something else. It started to teach me how to do that.
Yeah.
And I think your story is that same thing, just to see, are we willing, going back to what we started on, are we willing to sacrifice and to do the things we're asked to do? Um, and so I think that's what you highlighted there. I love because I've heard parts of that story, but I hadn't heard that part. And I
Okay.
love that, and it's a beautiful thing because I think that when it comes down to just uh, you know, we always talk on the show about being disruptive and being innovative with our efforts and being very strategic. Sometimes the strategic choice we have to make is a really hard one, to push pause for a season or to make a pivot and go a totally different direction. So thank you for sharing that story. I think that hits on a point that I didn't know we were going to talk about, but I
There we
think
go. That's what's beautiful.
it was the right, I think it was the right thing to talk about today. Um, but I want to point people back to your podcast again, the Level Up Life, especially if you are looking for ways to uh, tackle this concept of of building a business. And now a lot of what Scotty's focused on is health and wellness, but there's a lot of good principles that are there. And the thing that I've watched, and this is just something that goes back to that concept of we have pivots in life. I watched Scotty over time start in the health and wellness, but on the side, I'm also going through a life coach certification program, and I've been doing another coaching certification. Um, and I'm reading through this, and I'm like, it lists all the different kinds of because I love, like, creativity coaching is one of the things that I do. But what I've watched as I'm reading through this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, that's truly what Scotty really is you're a life coach. You happen to be focusing on health and wellness, but you really, like, you've been doing that, and it's that's that's one of the great places to be as a creative as well, is to transition into a place to where you can then coach and mentor and help other people reach their goals and dreams. So you're just another great example of that. Um, in the last couple of minutes we have here, what, for anyone who is creative and they've got these big goals that they want to hit, what's the number one piece of advice you give anyone who has a dream they want to chase after?
Yeah, you first have to love that thing that it is that you want to chase after, have a love for it. You have to stay consistent over time, and then you have to get obsessed. And some people might not like the word obsessed. And obsessed doesn't mean obsessive amounts of hours or time or, you know, negating your family. Obsessed means you go to sleep thinking about how can I help this person? How can I do that next thing? How can I, like, you're just obsessed about the idea, and then your mind and God and the universe, when you get to that level, will help collaborate, and you'll come up with those creative ideas to make it happen. And then you just got to stay consistent over the long haul. Like we're at where we're at today because it's been 15 and a half years of eating good every single day, reading books every single day, journaling, meditating, creating content just every single day for over 15 years.
That's awesome. And I think I didn't watch time very good, so we only have 30 seconds. So sorry, everyone,
That's all
for the
right.
rough end. But Scotty, thank you so much for just being on the show. And everyone, definitely go check out his podcast. And we'll see you in our next episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ted.